Live NFL trivia every Wednesday night on Twitch at 9 p.m. Eastern. Come show off your football knowledge for a chance to win cash prizes. Check the link in the description to find out more. And now, on with our feature presentation. Before I even begin today's video, let's address the elephant in the room. On days like this, football does not seem important. There are days where I absolutely love talking about the NFL. And there are days like today where doing so feels wrong, seems out of place, and seems trivial. What happened last night was, without any exaggeration, the scariest thing I've ever seen happen at a football game. And maybe the scariest thing I've ever seen in real time at a sporting event, with Christian Eriksen's similar incident at Euro 2020 being the only thing that comes close for me. It's something that we haven't seen in the NFL in quite some time, and it's something that, God willing, we will never see anything like again. I know that we're approaching the end of the regular season, and this is when football means the most, but today, it feels the least. Today is a somber reminder that this is entertainment, and this is a game, and that these are human beings that are playing this game. A healthy, 24-year-old man getting up and walking about after a clean hit, and then just dropping like that. I don't even know what to say. As of this recording, I have no idea what Damar Hamlin's status is. But today, all that matters is the health and the well-being of Hamlin. As of this recording, I have no idea what the NFL has decided to do with regards to figuring out the logistics of figuring out this game. But today, that is unimportant. All we can do at this point is hope and pray for Damar Hamlin, because this transcends the NFL, this transcends football, and this transcends sports. It's tough to transition after something like that. It really is. There's no good way to get into the video topic without making it seem insensitive, and making it seem oblivious as to what's happening around you. But I bring this topic up because what you might not know is that what happened last night was not the first time that there was ever a serious and heated discussion about whether or not to postpone a Monday Night Football game, where no one knew if they were going to play the game or not, and were just like yesterday, where the NFL, even though they made the right call by calling off the game, was rightfully criticized and lambasted for even having the audacity to report and allegedly suggest that the two teams play 5 minutes later after someone, and in the Bills' case, a teammate of theirs, may have just died on the field. The NFL came under serious fire for making the decision that they did. Because in 1978, when the Pittsburgh Steelers played the San Francisco 49ers, the real story wasn't what happened on the field during the game, but rather what happened off the field with the fact that the game was even played at all. And this is the story behind that. Before I talk about the actual game in question and how it all played out, we need some context to understand the importance of this game, and why there was a debate about whether or not to postpone the game in the first place. It's November 27, 1978. It's week 13 of the NFL season, and as we enter the fourth and final quarter of the newly expanded 16-game regular season, we've got a big Monday Night Football game in our hands between the Pittsburgh Steelers and the San Francisco 49ers. Now, for the 49ers, this game means absolutely nothing. They were an absolute mess of a football team, and were in the midst of one of the worst seasons by any team in NFL history. They were 1-11, had dropped 7 straight games, had the worst point differential in the conference, and had already fired their head coach, Pete McCauley, even though they hired him at the start of the season, making him one of the only coaches in the history of the NFL, alongside guys like Urban Meyer and Nathaniel Hackett in the 2020s, to be fired in the middle of his first season ever. But for the Pittsburgh Steelers, this game was absolutely monumental. As things stood entering this one, they were 10-2, and were leading the AFC Central by 1.5 games over the 9-4 Houston Oilers. If you win this game, you give yourself a nice cushion with 3 games to go, and win what would be your 5th straight division title. And on top of that, the Steelers were half a game up on the New England Patriots for the number 1 seed and for home field advantage throughout the playoffs. So if you win this game, you maintain that lead, and have a really good shot to have the playoffs run through Three Rivers Stadium. Now the Steelers, arguably the best team in football, were expected to blow out the 49ers, arguably the worst team in football. No one, not even the most optimistic 49er fan, expected that this game would be good. And to the surprise of no one, that was the case, as the Steelers absolutely destroyed the 49ers by a final score of 24-7, in a game that was nowhere near as close as what the final score might indicate. Pittsburgh didn't even play that great. They turned it over 4 times and committed 13 penalties for 102 yards. But they were just absolutely dominant over the 49ers. They outgained them 380 to 141 in total yardage, having over 2.5 times more yards. While the Steelers averaged 4 yards per carry on the ground and controlled the clock and the possession by running it 53 times, the Niners mustered up just 2.3 yards per carry, with the longest run of the game going for 7 yards. That's it. The Niners never led at any point. The Steelers led 17-0 at the half. The Steelers had nearly double the first downs that the Niners did, winning that battle 22-12. And not only did the Steelers force 5 turnovers, but they did it on 5 interceptions with one of the most dominant performances from a passing perspective of the Steel Curtain era. As during this game, Niners quarterback Scott Bohl went 10 for 28, completing just 35% of his passes for 113 yards, getting sacked 4 times for 39 yards, meaning that he finished the game with 74 net passing yards on 32 passing plays, or an abysmal average of 2.1 yards per passing play, throwing no touchdowns and 5 interceptions and posting a passer rating of 9.1, which is worse than if he did nothing but spiked the ball into the ground on every single play. Nothing about this game was particularly good or even the slightest bit interesting. It was one of those games where you knew from the first second how it was going to play out, as this was one of the biggest mismatches, if not the biggest mismatch, in the history of Monday Night Football. So there was just about no drama on the field with how this game turned out. The real drama came from the fact that this game was even played in the first place. On the night of November 27th, 1978, at 6:00 p.m. on the West Coast, the Steelers played the 49ers at Candlestick Park. But 7 hours before, at 11 a.m., the game was the furthest thing on anyone's mind. Because on that day, this happened.
As president of the Board of Supervisors, it's my duty to make this announcement. Both Mayor Moscone and Supervisor Harvey Milk have been shot and killed.
I'm not going to dive into all the specifics about this, simply because there are a lot of videos and documentaries about this out there already that go in depth. But sometime around 11 a.m. that day, the mayor of San Francisco, George Moscone, and Supervisor Harvey Milk were shot, killed, and assassinated by Dan White. In summary, White resigned from his post as the city supervisor on November 10th. To become a supervisor in the city, White had to give up his job as a fireman, where he made $18,000 a year. And now, as a supervisor, he was making roughly half that amount, making $9,600 a year, which had himself and his family struggling, especially since his wife quit her job as a teacher after giving birth. He handed in his resignation, and the resignation was accepted. However, 5 days later, he found a way to finance himself, as 16 of his family members, as well as a bunch of his constituents, pooled together money so he could keep serving the city and could make it work financially. The only problem? Once you hand in your resignation and it's accepted, you can't take it back, meaning that Moscone was going to fill White's seat. And this made White understandably furious, especially because Moscone wasn't going to give White his job back, since White was already a bit controversial with some of his policies, and since Mayor Moscone and White had different ideologies, with Moscone being liberal and White being conservative. White was taken aback by this news, and decided to take matters into his own hands. The morning of November 27th was supposed to be the day where Moscone would hold a press conference and announce who the new supervisor for District 8 would be, which was set to be Don Horanzi. But just minutes before the press conference, White stormed into the mayor's office and shot Mayor Moscone, then stormed into his old office where he found Harvey Milk and shot him. The assassination of the mayor and his supervisor left San Francisco in absolute shambles, and the ripple effects of this would be felt for years to come, and understandably so. But in the wake of this unthinkable event, in just a few hours, the 49ers were set to host the Steelers in the same city where this event was happening. And in the eyes of San Francisco officials, it was obvious to them. There was no way that this game should be played. You just couldn't play the game under any circumstances. Not today. And the San Francisco Park and Recreation Commission, the group that owns Candlestick Park, requested shortly after the assassination that the game be postponed to a different date. As Eugene Friend, the president of the commission, said in a telegram to Commissioner Pete Rozelle, "It is our strong belief that the use of a city-owned facility this evening for a sporting event is inappropriate and would be in poor taste. Today's tragedy has deeply touched every San Franciscan and persons of goodwill everywhere. Accordingly, the inconvenience caused by this request is fully justified." Now, there were a few reasons why many thought that the game would be postponed, or should be postponed. I could talk for hours about all the reasons, but here are just a few of them, with some that were somewhat talked about in the telegram, and others that might be implied or might have been considered. Number one, it would be a highly inappropriate use of city resources at a time like this. It's the same reason why you see games get moved from cities where there's a massive snowstorm. There are more important things for city officials to take care of than an entertainment event. You don't know how the city is going to respond after the assassination of its mayor. There was a fear that you would get rioting in the streets and chaos and whatnot. You need all hands on deck downtown and around the mayor's office when it comes to security and law enforcement. To have security and police and other important officials having to deal with 50,000 people at Candlestick Park for a football game just seems like a bad idea. Number two, and this is an interesting reason that wasn't given in the telegram, but might have crossed the minds of San Francisco. What did this mean from a broadcasting perspective? The game was blacked out on ABC in San Francisco due to not selling out. And usually, that means that for people to watch the game who aren't there in person in the stadium, they'll listen on the radio, or they'll just wait for the highlights. However, would local radio even be covering the game? Or would all of the stations be diverting all of their attention to this assassination? Remember, there wasn't really sport talk radio back in the 70s. And would the local news even show highlights afterwards, since they probably just spend the entire broadcast talking about what happened in the city after what just happened? People might have truly been left in the dark with no other recourse, where their only two options were to be there in person or to stay oblivious. Number three, it'd be tough for everyone to focus. You're playing in a city where just a couple of hours ago, the mayor and his supervisor got assassinated, and you didn't know any other details. How could you focus on football when this just happened in your own backyard? How could you feel safe? How could the workers do their jobs in the right state of mind? How could the fans take their mind off of this to watch a game? There were a lot of variables at play with regards to how people would feel and focus, since their attention obviously wouldn't be 100% of the way on the game. And number four, remember that 15 years ago, the NFL took a massive hit from a PR perspective for playing games in the wake of the assassination of President John F. Kennedy, especially when the American Football League decided to call those games off. Commissioner Pete Rozelle famously called the decision to play the games that weekend one of the biggest regrets and mistakes of his life. Now was a chance to rectify the situation to some extent, and show that some things are bigger than football, and show that it wouldn't make sense and would be highly inappropriate to play a game hours after the mayor got assassinated in that city. One writer even said that if Rozelle decided not to postpone this game, that he would be staying in character, and would be showing that football equaled life, and that regardless of the tragedy, and regardless of the circumstances, the show must go on. However, despite all the negative things that could be attached to this game, from the fact that people in San Francisco might not be able to keep up, to the fact that this was a public relations nightmare, to the fact that the leader of the city just died, and allocating public resources to a football game might not be the best or most strategic move, so shortly after this, the NFL rejected the request. The request was made too late to postpone, and the appropriate thing to do would be to play the game and just have a moment of silence. The game was going on as scheduled. Now, 49er officials said that ABC had no say in this decision. It was entirely the NFL's call. But I would be stunned if ABC didn't step in and say, under no circumstances are you postponing this game to tomorrow. They paid for a full schedule, and they were going to get a full schedule of Monday night games. And if you moved it to Tuesday, which was the best day for the network, and forced the preemption of 4 of the top shows in the country by TV ratings in Happy Days, Laverne and Shirley, Three's Company, and Taxi, and forced us to air what would be a non-competitive battle involving the worst team in football, there will be consequences. Plus, just logistically, since there were no bye weeks, it would be tough to move it so late in the season. Naturally, the NFL took a lot of heat for this decision, with hundreds of fans who had tickets to the game frantically making phone calls to figure out if it was still on, or to blast the team for having the game. While Ed DeBartolo Jr., the owner of the 49ers, said on Rozel's call, Pete Rozelle made the decision. He's commissioner. He's God. And just like that, the game went on as scheduled, tragedy and all. More than 40 years later, the decision to not postpone the Steelers-49ers game from 1978 still remains a controversial one, especially since there were more pressing matters in the city. At whatever side of the coin you land on, whether it's that the NFL made the right call by having the game go on, or that the NFL made the wrong call and showed how insensitive it was by not postponing it, that's up to you. However, one thing is clear, and has always been clear. Whether it's 2023 or 1978, the NFL and Monday Night Football are so big that whenever something controversial happens on a Monday night in the NFL, the whole country is going to be paying attention, game or no game. Get your official Jaguar Gator 9 merchandise by going to jg9shop.com, and be sure to like this video, ring the notification bell, and subscribe down below if you haven't already, as it helps the channel out a lot. And be sure to check out Twitch every Wednesday night at 9 p.m. Eastern for your chance to play NFL trivia and win cash prizes. Link in the description below. If you want to see videos like this condensed down to 60 seconds, then follow me on TikTok at Jaguar Gator 9. To see college football videos, subscribe to Jaguar Gator 8. To see highlight videos of players throughout the history of the NFL, subscribe to JG9 Highlights. Also, special thanks to all of our Patreon supporters for helping out the channel. Your support is greatly appreciated. So you can become a patron and request future video topics in the description below.